This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hello, Bad Movie Lovers. Welcome back to Bad Movies We Love. I am your host, Nick Scheist,
the master of this stupid stuff.
It is You're So Zane month here at Bad Movies We Love, celebrating the films of Billy Zane. So Billy, if you're listening, just know that this is done in love. Looking back at one of Billy's big early supporting roles in Sniper was an interesting observational experiment. But before we get to this week's episode, just a smidge of housekeeping. If you're anything like me and you love your trash with treasure buried inside, you're in the right place. So before we dive in, do me a solid. If you like what you hear, hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode, because we have a long list of movies to get through, and that list just keeps on growing. Leave a rating and a review, especially if you've ever come across one of the movies we're covering here on the show and said, wait, this movie rules, because it helps more weirdos like us find the show. And if you really want to support the show, check out the exclusive bonus episodes on the Resistance members-only tier at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support. And for just $5 a month, you get access to all those other shows, including Bimon Sci-Fi Con, Rom-Com-a-thon, Bad Movie Futures, and more. Plus, when you sign up, you get access to the Discord, and I'll send you a sticker pack as a thank you. And whether you have been here since the very beginning, or if you're tuning in for the very first time, I am happy to have you here all the same. If it is your first time here, I think it's worth noting that there is an anonymous listener survey in the show notes. The show notes also has the phone number for the show, which is 1-805-285-3885, and it also has my email, badmovieswelove@theshice.com. So if you have something that you want to tell me, or maybe there's a movie you want me to cover, or maybe you want to be a guest on the show at some point in the future, all those options are great ways to get in touch with me. And without further ado, I bring to you what is probably the crown jewel of Billy Zane month here at Bad Movies We Love. It's a movie that's very near and dear to my heart. I literally, genuinely love this movie, and I was joined by my buddy Newman from the Movies for Dayz podcast because he also loves this movie. That's right, we're talking about Ernest R. Dickerson's Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight from 1995.
It's a fun movie, but it's scary when it's scary.
It's gnarly, man.
Holy fuck, I forgot that the key has its own music cue.
And maybe we're like simple monkeys that just want to watch fireballs.
But all I remembered was Dick Miller and boobs.
It is very unencumbered.
Get that pussy off the table.
Enough with this ho dunk, po dunk, hi diddly ding dong crap.
How do I know you ain't gonna kill me?
You have my word. I mean, frankly, we've been counting on you, haven't we? The world needs more people like you, Mr. Roach.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Of course, you don't mind if we kill the others, do you?
Hey, if it makes you feel good, do it.
Makes you feel good, do it. Exactly.
Newman, welcome back to the show, bud. It's been longer than I thought. I looked back, and Wolf Cop was like way earlier, and it was February. And it feels like the whole year has gone by, but we did just talk recently for your podcast, so it really hasn't been that long since we've spoken.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's been a minute since I've darkened your door. However, we have had discourse very recently on the great Michael Keaton film, Knox Goes Away. So,
that's right.
Folks out there like to hear Nick and I talking about great movies, then you can go over to my show and you'll hear the two of us talking about Knox Goes Away in a very recent episode of Movies for Dayz.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to take a second to talk about that because, number one, I think it's a good movie and people should see it, and it was underseen just like via circumstance. But I talk so much about sort of bad movies where I feel like most of what I'm spending my time on is like I'm coming prepared to defend the strengths of movies that we know are weak. And in the case of Knox Goes Away, that's not really what we did. I mean, obviously we talked about the movie in its entirety, but a lot of what the context of the film is and the context of our conversation actually like got into a lot of significant, I think, like emotional territory, which almost never happens on this show. So if you want to hear like an actual like in-depth sort of discovery of that stuff, then please listen to the Knox Goes Away episode.
But we're also here to have a damn good time.
That's true.
And we always do when it's on Bad Movies We Love. So thanks again so much for having me back. I always have an absolute blast on this show.
Anytime. But since you're the guest of honor, would you do the honors and let the people know what we are talking about?
Absolutely. Tonight we will be discussing Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, 1995, directed by Ernest Dickerson, written by Ethan Reiff, Cyrus, Voris, and Mark Bishop, and starring the great William Sadler, Billy Zane, Jada Pinkett, Dick Miller, CCH Pounder, Thomas Hayden Church, and featuring the excellent voice of John Kassir as the Crypt Keeper.
It's quite a cast, and you saved me the trouble of going through all the details myself, so kudos to you, sir. This movie was, first of all, this movie is very near and dear to my heart. I legitimately love this movie. A lot of the time when we talk about movies on this show, it's a movie that somebody else loves, that I get to learn why they love it. I get to give them a platform for expressing why they love it and what they think is great about it. This is an instance where like I legitimately love this movie. And the first time I saw it is one of those movies where I was like, I have to show everybody I know this movie and we're all going to love it. And like, so this is what, 95. So it's right sort of before high school, but I'm also going to a Lutheran school at the time. And I'm like, Demon Hunters, all of my religious friends have to watch this.
That's brilliant. And it's wonderful that you've started this way, because I got to tell you, I have two favorite horror movies of the 1990s. It is a decade that I think gets maligned for horror way too often, and I can get on that soapbox later so that we don't front load this, but Demon Knight and The Frighteners are my two favorite horror films from the 90s. The 90s was not just Scream and movies that wanted to be Scream. There was a whole fucking 5+ years of this weird identity crisis time where we had all sorts of weird, cool, chill, gritty, fun, sexy, oddball horror movies. And this was one of the very, very best. I love this film unabashedly. It never loses its value. It never has a moment where I'm like, I don't really like this so much anymore. It moves. This whole ensemble cast is just perfect. These characters are so well realized. It's such a fun siege movie. You can see all the inspiration from all these other great horror mainstays dating back to like the original Night of the Living Dead. It's fucking great. I saw it for the first time on HBO when I was staying over at a friend's house when I was way too young to be watching this shit. But he had a single dad, and his dad was a player. And his dad was not interested in being a present father. He was interested in getting some tail. So we would be crashing the night at this dude's house, and his dad didn't even know about it. And he'd come downstairs with some gal, and like she would be leaving, and then he'd look at me. He's in a bathrobe, and he's like, "Oh, Jeff, are you staying over the night?" And I said, "Yep, sure am. I'm watching an HBO movie at fucking 2 a.m. He's like, "All right, well, have a good night." And he'd go upstairs. I'm just like, I don't know what life is, but I think I'm living it. And that was how I saw Demon Knight on HBO late at night on a friend's TV.
I think that's also how I saw it, was cable, late night. I have the DVD for sure, but it was packed with all the other stuff when I moved. And I was like, we're going to leave the movies in storage for now. And then once we have a better storage solution, we'll circle back to that. So I couldn't just like pull out the DVD, but it was like the original sort of DVD packaging where it was like the paper cover with like the snap on the side. It's like a long plastic snap where it just like folds open. It's not even like the nice plastic box. So it was one of the first DVDs that I remember owning. And being a kid that grew up in parochial school, at least after after third grade. So most of the people that I'm exposed to at that point in my life are not big into like horror movies or stuff with demons and monsters, but also I'm seeing this movie around 12 years old. So I'm really starting to have these moments of realization of things that I love. And Monster Squad was already a movie that I loved at that point. And I was like, whoa, this feels kind of like that, but in a much more like adult friendly way. And I'd watched Tales from the Crypt on HBO before seeing this movie. So I was kind of already like primed for it. And looking back on it, I sort of was just like expecting things to stand out to me that I could quickly point to and be like, well, that's why people think it's a bad movie. And watching it, I'm like, I don't know. I think probably the stuff with the Crypt Keeper is like the weakest part of it, but it has to be that because it's Tales from the Crypt. But other than that, I did not feel this movie has any particularly standout weaknesses.
I've got like 3 nitpick thingies that I can mention, later on when we get to more or less. That's as much as I can do. And, I watched a lot of new horror movies this year. I was, a little bit critical of some of them. Here I am watching Demon Knight again.
Yeah.
And I've only got minor nitpicks. So much of why I think this movie struggled with some viewers and some critics especially has to do, I think, more with the cinematic landscape at the time and a poorly timed release date.
That is fair. Yeah, dropping this in January when it was initially slated to be like Halloween fair is not really what you want to do with this. And as we get into a little bit more of the deeper details, like this was an idea that existed for like almost 10 years before it was made. So this was out there and people knew about it. And maybe had this come in the late 80s, it fits the bill of those types of horror movies a little bit more so. But that being said, I think a lot of people are going to hit play on this episode, getting ready to be like, this is not a bad movie. I need to listen to why they think it's a bad movie. And first of all, I don't, but we're going to go to the tail of the tape. So that way I can just clarify that this movie has an IMDb score of 6.7. So good user rating, Metascore 48. So that's bad. Rotten Tomatoes critic score 45, also bad. But then the audience scores a 65, and the Letterboxd scores a 3.4, so a 68, which gives us a Bad Movies We Love total of 58.6 out of 100. So coming in like less than a point and a half under the threshold for what I typically use as the barometer for Bad Movies We Love. And so like, don't shoot the messenger, we love this movie.
The line has to be somewhere, and occasionally you'll get something that's very close to the line, but it's still on one side of the line. And yeah, we're not the ones who think this is a bad movie. This is one of the episodes of Bad Movies We Love where we love needs to be underlined 3 times.
Very much so.
That's what this is all about. And I do want to speak just really quickly about Tales from the Crypt, the show, and Beavis and Butthead. Because these were 2 things that I watched when I was too young to be watching them. However, they were shows that very paradoxically were not for kids, but were totally for kids.
Yes.
And I love that I watched these things when I was young. They've helped informed my tastes. They've helped to inform the way I engage with media. They've helped to inform the idea that your relationship to a piece of media can evolve as you evolve. And so you don't necessarily have to make a snap judgment about something after just one viewing, or you can be open to the idea of, okay, this is worth revisiting. In a few years, it might mean something more, mean something different. I think it's good to like kind of stretch yourself in that way while still enjoying these more salacious kinds of entertainment in a consequence-free environment. We didn't have HBO at my house. If I ever saw HBO, it's because I was crashing at someone else's place. But what we did do was go to Blockbuster. And you go to Blockbuster and you can rent videos of Tales from the Crypt episodes, Beavis and Butthead episodes. And these were things that I did. And I kind of got into these things in tandem. And so they sort of fed into each other. And so being very into Tales from the Crypt, the show, and how dangerous it was and sort of hokey it was. Every episode is just a morality tale. It's like a fairy tale. And you've got all these big name actors coming on that show and hamming it up and doing it just like something right out of the comics. And being such a huge fan of the Muppets and puppet movies and theater and stuff like that, the Crypt Keeper just as a design and as a convention really appealed to me. I always loved that fucker. And so it really was great to jump into this movie and go, holy damn, they're really doing it. It's just like an episode of the show, but bigger, better, longer, with higher aspirations and not your typical formula. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the show was clearly geared to be like palatable for younger viewers, but not necessarily geared at them. And I think similarly to you, not that it was Beavis and Butthead. Beavis and Butthead like existed in my sphere. My brother-in-law watched it and he liked it, and so I knew it was there, and I had seen a couple episodes. I had like the Sega video game, so it's like they were part of the zeitgeist at the time, so I was familiar with them, but it wasn't really like my thing at the time. For me, it was Ren and Stimpy, which if you watch Ren and Stimpy, it is a terrifying cartoon. There's like moments where they're unzipping their skin, or they do those like super graphic close-ups inside their ear or something, and so like that was my sort of cartoon that I would probably scar me and change the way that I look at things like animation. But yeah, Tales from the Crypt being an HBO show kind of makes it this diamond in the rough, in that it was at a time where HBO had not become the legacy program staple that it is today. Like, this is pre-Sopranos, this is pre-Oz, so HBO had not had the brand recognition yet of being what it was. I watched HBO then when it was Taxi Cab Confessions and Real Sex, way before all of the legacy stuff started to hit their airwaves. And so to go back and see that a character like the Crypt Keeper, like a puppet, could be something that was meant to entertain adults, and like that was normal and acceptable at the time, and it wasn't necessarily considered juvenile in the way that it might be now if something similar was on the air.
Because this was the same time frame when you had the TV show Dinosaurs.
Hell yeah.
That was also super popular.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and horror hosts were also a thing. You had Joe Bob Briggs and Elvira. And there's another one whose name always escapes me, and I'm like, poo-poo, you must remember. But it's interesting, all of these, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was only just a few years before the first Tales from the Crypt pilot really got going. And so all of these things, as you were saying, kind of swam together very well in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just got its 35th anniversary release this past weekend. I almost went to see it, but it wasn't covered by my A-list. So I was like, maybe I'll wait and see if I can catch it at another time. But yeah, like people in suits, right? Like even the second one with like Toka and Razor, like this was just accepted and it was leaned into in a way, partially because digital effects were not readily available in the same way that they were. But I think there was also just a love for the craft of this kind of work that very few filmmakers today still want to embody. Like when I did the Critters episode with Donnie, he sprung a question on me and was like, well, who would you want to see like do a remake of this movie if it was made today? And I was like, well, it's got to be Del Toro, because this is a guy who believes in the craftsmanship. And not only that, like in his free time, like he paints miniatures and stuff. Like I see his social media, like he just like makes little models and stuff. So I'm like, this is a guy that loves that stuff so much that it's part of him in a way that he cannot separate it out. So I think hopefully there is maybe like a swing back towards that a little bit as our age group maybe begins to pull away from a lot of stuff that doesn't, fill that void. And I think I've seen some of it more with some more horror movies in the last like year or so, where I'm like, oh, there's some good practical effects decisions here. Not everything is being done in post. And, you know, I think with a movie like this, it has to be gory, but also you're doing a lot of costume design. Like they built the whole set for this in an airplane hangar in Van Nuys. I've eaten at the restaurant that's on that property where they filmed it. So I don't see those kinds of like decisions being made, but the staying power of something like this that even uses like some VFX shots, right? So it doesn't have to be all or none, but if you leave completely behind the craftsman like work and the attention to detail that comes with having to like build a physical object, then I think we lose something as cinema fans. Not just in the sense of, we're losing like the jobs and like that set of skills that go along with those jobs, as like those jobs are no longer put into employment to do this type of work, but we're losing something in a tactile way from the viewership experience. And I think that's really important. Like there's scenes in like fighting movies and stuff where when you kind of get like the weird arm break, which we have here in a very graphic way. But, you know, we were watching, my wife and I went to Oakland. We met up with Scott Maupin from a film club, and we went to see a movie, and it was I think it was Fight or Flight, the one with Josh Hartnett recently. And it's like a big fight on a plane, and like he snaps a guy's arm in that movie, but they do it practically, and just like the look of it is just, all of us are just like, oh my God. Like, so you need those kind of moments. I just don't think that happens digitally, because as humans, we're sort of like conditioned to react to things a certain way. And I think especially with the evolution of so many people pumping out like fake AI bullshit all the time, like, yes, it's getting better in the sense that like it looks better, but it still doesn't look real. And the realness is what we respond to, I think, especially as horror fans.
Yeah, and I really want to echo what you mentioned before about the sort of tactile intelligence and appreciation that comes from actual physical art. The kind of thing that takes time and attention and, not to sound, reductive or repetitive, but artistry. There is a kind of intelligence that goes beyond the cerebral that you need tactile connection to experience and understand. And the more we give over to the non-tactile digital platform and just let it do all the work for us, instead of being a tool in the toolbox, the more we're losing that source of intelligence. And I feel that, and this is probably just a lot of my schooling coming out, I feel that as a people, we've spent so long putting the greatest value on one kind of intelligence and ignoring everything else. And it comes out in these sorts of ways as well, when we start handing over the artwork to the newest technology to just do it faster and easier. However, I want to speak some hope to this, this bleak landscape, especially in the world of horror. It really has been getting better, especially in the last decade plus. Things are getting wet. Things are getting gross and slimy again. You've got horror creators, you've got horror franchises like the Terrifier series. You've got, sort of low budget hits like In a Violent Nature. Lots of these newer horror movies are realizing that it looks better, the fans like it more, and it's actually more cost effective to do it with the real wet, sticky shit. And we are getting back to that in a lot of ways. Big shout out to The Ugly Stepsister, one of my favorite new films of the year.
It's really good.
Lots of great gory practical makeup effects in there.
Yeah, that scene with the shoe, the ballet shoe at the end, I was like, and I just watched Jimmy and Stiggs, which is Joe Begos.
Dude, I got to see that. I like Joe Begos.
Yeah, and like that is very wet, and you can tell like it's an interesting idea, because I think there's just like a certain acceptance of like, well, we don't have the money to do the thing that like we would love to do with a lot of money. But in lieu of that, we're going to do it cheaply or as cheap as we can, but also still buy in 100% into the idea of what we're doing. And so it operates in this very interesting area where just as a fan of low budget filmmaking, I'm like, all right, this is all like a single location, just a couple of actors, like really committing to what they're doing on screen. And Begos is one of them. So that definitely helps. But yeah, I think a really, really good example of like what you can do with just like commitment to the idea and like working the problem like an engineer.
And, you know, even more examples are just coming to me now. Weapons is a great example. Bring Her Back. Talk to Me. Barbarian. I mean, I know I'm dropping the same director multiple times, but it's only because they're fucking great. Their shit is so good. And all of these movies are employing that wet, honest to goodness, makeup heavy, you know, skin prosthetic gore. And I think it's because the people who grew up loving those movies are now the ones in the driver's seats. They're the ones making the decisions and making the movies. And so they have a fondness for the practical effects. And so they find themselves leaning into that. And reflexively, is that even the right word? At the same time, you've got people in that same age group who aren't the filmmakers. They're the film watchers. And they also grew up liking the practical shit, so they want to buy the practical effects. So it all kind of feeds into each other. And it's it's great for fans like us because holy shit, let's remember Demon Knight and say, yeah, that was wet.
It sure was. It's pretty juicy for a film. You know, I used to not be able to really articulate why I liked explosions or why anybody liked explosions in movies, right? And the more I have these kinds of conversations, I feel like the thing that stands out is that like it's real and the stakes are high, and knowing that it's real and that like the stunt people risked their safety to do this, and like sometimes a guy's lit on fire, like that's a crazy thing to do to make a movie, just light me on fire, but we're going to do it in the safest way possible. So just like the stakes and the fact that you can tell when it isn't real versus when, like, I think if you grew up in an era post real pyrotechnics, it may be a lot harder to spot. But like when I'm watching a movie and a building explodes and like the camera is rattling from the shockwave, then I'm like, yeah, you cannot fake that. So like, yeah, in Critters, they blow up a barn and they did it with like Primacord. So they blew up an entire barn just for this one shot in like a fairly low budget 80s horror movie. But they spent a lot of their money to make the shot that they wanted to make count actually really count. And so it's not just a thing of like, oh, I want gooiness. I want like makeup effects. I want practical stuff. I want from filmmakers to sort of frame their decisions around like the importance of that stuff to how they're telling their story. And I think, you know, the really good movies that have staying power in the horror genre actually are probably ones that are great examples of that as well.
Yeah, it comes back to just incorporating that artistry. It's something that you can feel. It's physically existing in the space, lights bouncing off of it. When it's a real explosion, when a person is actually on fire, you as an involved viewer cannot help but get more excited. That's why we watch this stuff. It's exciting. It's involving. If it's just so clearly fake on the screen, it creates barriers.
It does.
To that investment. And it's so funny that you mentioned explosions because that's something that more and more has come up for me in covering movies like from the 80s. And just seeing the beautiful pyrotechnics that they used to orchestrate in these things. It's just how so big and powerful. And you kind of forget if you go too long without seeing that shit. I mean, shoot, I'm thinking right now about From Dusk Till Dawn. That final explosion at the end when they bust out of the titty twister for good. That actually like set the whole facade ablaze, this thing they had built, because the heat that they were shooting in, it was so hot that day and the explosion was a little more than they had expected. And so it created this whole fucking fire that shut down production for like over a week because they had to rebuild the facade.
Wow. Yeah, see, it's like when something like that happens, like it's not that I don't understand safety and delays and going over budget and all of that stuff, but like we remember the thing that went boom, and maybe we're like simple monkeys that just want to watch fireballs, all right? Like maybe it is that simple, but Demon Knight also has a great explosion in the beginning of the movie with these two cars, and you're driving the car while it's on fire. So you get like a really great intro to this story with these characters, and you like we don't know enough about them at that point to really know that like this guy's a demon or like this guy's a hero. We just kind of like see a car chase, and like looking back at it, it's like, oh, he's driving a Firebird with like fire coming out from under the hood. Like I think there's a little wink and nod there, but it lets you know right away that we're not messing around. Like we've taken this from the TV show to the big screen, and we are spending money to make this the thing that we want it to be.
And the fire demon foreshadowing is just an inch thick, because later when the cops get there, Billy Zane walks through, not exactly through, but sort of behind the fire. And he's moving almost slow-mo, very ethereal, like just walking right out of the flames, right? The difference between these two characters is set up immediately. They're doing the Terminator thing.
They are.
All we know is that these guys are powerful, one's after the other, and whatever's about to go down is going to heavily involve the two of them. And one of them is a little more slick, right? He's a little less rough around the edges. I mean, Breaker's car is the one that breaks down. And yeah, as you said, man, flames coming out of Billy Zane's car. It just, God damn it, this movie, everything it does, except for like a couple of teeny nitpicks, just about everything it does, I fucking love.
It's funny you mentioned the Terminator thing, because I think in all the times that I watched the movie, I never picked up on that until now. But I love the Terminator, and so that's probably a big reason of why I love Demon Knight, because it's doing the Kyle Reese thing from the first Terminator movie. And I'm like, he's actually a great Reese. Like, so I was having such a blast just coming to that realization of like, oh, this isn't something I haven't seen before, but it does something from a movie that I love, and it does it in this different way, but it sort of borrows the important stuff without feeling like a hollow gesture, or B, like homage for homage's sake, which unfortunately I feel like a lot of sort of newer movies just kind of throw in there as appeasement. And I'm just like, I get it, but also I don't like it. So I like that this movie did it without like spoon feeding it to me.
So often now, when that kind of stuff is done in a movie, it's done for the sake of itself. The person recreating a tableau or doing a shout out, they don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing it. Whereas in the 90s, and that's part of what makes this such a 90s movie, in the 90s, you had these clear shout outs / inspirations stuck throughout your whole flick, but they didn't take over the moment. They were weaved into the tapestry of what you were doing. You were building upon that. You were doing different, slightly subversive, slightly cooler things, but you were giving an honest, unashamed nod to what inspired it. And like, I'm going through this whole movie seeing all these little allusions to like, whoa, that's a lot like Hellraiser, and oh, that's a lot like the first Night of the Living Dead, and oh, that's a lot like Terminator. That's a lot like the Invisible Man. What? We have a moment where severed the head, sorry, still not dead. And that's like comical. That's like some Sam Raimi shit right there. And it's great.
It is. And the humor balance is really interesting in this film, in that I feel like its commitment to being like basically an action horror film is very solid, despite the fact that Billy Zane is playing this in his own description as like Robin Williams' evil genie, right? So he's playing it from a perspective of a comedic role, but also an evil comedic role. But then when we see most of our heroes interact with the the demons or the evil, they treat it as if it is a real legitimate threat, like 99% of the time. Every now and then it's like there's sort of like a little wiggle room for some humor in those instances, but for the most part they treat it like it's a straight horror film, and Billy treats it like it's a horror comedy. And I think that's why it works so well, because his presence becomes this thing that is like very out of place after he takes off the cowboy hat and like drops the pretense that he's going with. But before we get into like the rest of this too deep, let me just take a moment here, set the table for the audience. So unlike the HBO series, the film was not adapted directly from the EC Comics. The first draft for this movie was written in 1987, before the show even aired, and it was briefly attached to Child's Play director Tom Holland, not Spider-Man. After he moved on, the script circulated for like almost a decade, first to Pumpkinhead screenwriter Mark Carducci, then to Pet Sematari's Mary Lambert, who pitched some bold new ideas, but she could not secure financing after her sequel to Pet Sematary flopped. So the project stalled at Charlie Band's Full Moon Features due to budget issues at the time. Before finally landing at Joel Silver's feet at Silver Pictures, Universal picked it as the strongest of what was the original planned trilogy of spin-offs from the show, and they fast-tracked this one for release, which was, like we said, originally slated for Halloween of 94, but delayed to January of 95. And then to cut costs, 2 versions of the script were drafted, one with demons and one without. I don't know how you do Demon Night with no demons, but in the no demon version, the villain disguised himself as a Bible salesman commanding sinister men in black. Fearing that killer yuppie monsters would not sell, Universal stepped in with extra money to ensure the film had the full-blown demons on screen. And then the film, released Friday, January 13th, 1995, grossed $21 million against his $13 million budget, which is, pretty on par for this kind of horror movie at the time. And it was planned as part of a trilogy, as I said, although neither of the planned sequels were made. But here we are talking about it. This is the 30th anniversary, too. I didn't even realize that.
Well, how do you like that? I mean, we're only about 8 months late, 7 months late. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But hey, that's still, we got to it. We got to it in the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole flick is so friggin' magical in so many ways because, as you had mentioned before with Billy Zane, he brought all this comedy to the character. So much of that was not on the page at all. And he kind of was allowed, you might say, by the director to just sort of reshape the character in the image that he saw best. And William Sadler, Dick Miller, pretty much everybody just praised Ernest Dickerson up and down for how collaborative he was, how encouraging he was, what a great environment he set. And that's the other thing about this movie that makes it so great is the characters and the actors in this ensemble. They make every one of these characters so memorable, so impossible to mix up with anybody. They have such a clear arc and history just within the first scene or so that you see them. And it's because of how good the actors are and because of how well the direction is.
Yeah, I also think that like the character choices are like they're big choices early so that you don't have to work your way into all of that. Like they're all sort of very clear archetypes much earlier in the film versus like, oh, we're going to sort of let the cookie crumble more slowly and then we'll piecemeal this out to you. So that way, oh, by the end, like that this guy's the dick. Like, that Thomas Hayden Church is the dick from the very beginning. Like, that Uncle Willie's the drunk, that CCH Pounder is the boss, So all of those archetypes are so clearly established early on that I don't think you have to do as much work when you trust your actors that way. Like you give them very specific characters and you're like, this is who you are. It's going to be a collaborative process and we're just going to let it be natural in that way. And I think that's what comes across is like the cast just works so well together. It's not even just, like Billy Zane, fantastic. We're doing this movie because it's Billy Zane month. Of course, this, he says, is his favorite role that he's ever done. So of course, Billy Zane is like the tip of the spear here, but you get like really just excellent performances all the way around, even from someone like the smaller bit players. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and really like breathe life into these characters in a way that makes you care when you're supposed to and also not care when you're not supposed to.
Yeah, it's got such, in my opinion, a confident tone.
Yes.
And it shifts beautifully. The score is also really fucking good for this thing. When we first see like the key, right? There's like this music cue, and I was like, holy fuck, I forgot that the key has its own music cue. I get very Hellraiser, you know, like when we see the lament configuration. Oh.
Yeah, right.
And I gotta say one other thing, the director of photography, Rick Bota, the lighting in this, it all takes place basically at night, and I can see everything, and it looks gorgeous. I'm not saying every movie is like this, but I'm going to echo the words of my good friend Hazel Monson. Filmmakers, light your fucking scenes.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when I'm not going to get too much on a tangent, but when we were talking about like the industry losing people in skill sets, when people talk about things like all of a sudden in like the last year or two, like color grading became this thing that like film Twitter was obsessed with. And I was like, I need to mute this or I'm going to lose my damn mind. Lighting is what's important because light shows color. So if you don't light things correctly, everything's going to be sort of washed out. So I don't even think it is a color grading thing as much as it is a lighting tech thing. And as things have moved towards a like, we want like real realism, right? And so like in real realism, like sometimes when you're in the dark, you don't see anything. And like sometimes that's effective as a choice, but a lot of the time, like when the entire movie kind of exists in the dark and there's not enough contrast, then you're like doing yourself a disservice. So lighting techs, especially when you're filming a movie inside an airplane hangar where you built all of the sets from scratch, yeah, lighting's going to be really important. And this movie looks great.
It looks so good. I mean, I'm just going to keep saying positive things. So, I mean, you know, don't, you're driving this thing. Okay. I'm just the wacky guy sitting shotgun, you know, smoking his pipe, yelling at you.
Well, I know, we always do synopsis haikus here. So I'm curious, did you prepare one for the show? I heard a rumor.
I most certainly did prepare a synopsis haiku. But I went a little overboard with my poetry acumen, and I also prepared a limerick.
Ooh, well, Stephanie will be happy to hear that. I'll make sure to let her know that you've been inspired by her choices. So let me go first with the haiku, and then I will give you the floor. Demons on the prowl, one man's hand with holy fate, an oath sealed in blood.
Ooh, that's epic. I like that.
Okay. I scrapped the original and was like, I need to do this over. And I think I was better for it.
So here we are. 90s horror gem. But all I remembered was Dick Miller and boobs.
I think that's all Dick Miller remembered as well.
But, you know, they did like 15 takes. I should think he remembered that all the way up to his deathbed.
Yeah, every time he walks through, he goes, oops, what was my line? We got to start over.
I think I kicked something.
Tricky Dick.
I really ruined the shot there. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's the limerick I put together. Breaker has a heart full of fight. With 7, he'll face down the plight. From the collector he'll flee with the Jesus blood key as he finds who's the next demon knight.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Gonna make sure we add the proper music cues for that as well, because it deserves the little fiddle music or whatever the hell I use to do background music for that.
Well, thank you, and shout out to Stephanie.
Yeah, she'll be very happy. I think we both sort of leaned into this notion of fate that is present in this film. Like, all of it is guided by external forces, right? He doesn't show up here on accident. He's not even really making a choice. It's like he's bound to the responsibility of what he does. And so he's just sort of like doing his job. in that way. And he is led on a path that he like just has to follow because that's how it goes.
And this is something else I'm not sure. People can correct me. But I'm not sure this is something we get before the 90s. This is like a fantasy element being injected into this horror film. Like, this isn't like The Exorcist where it's like, or Rosemary's Baby, where it's like, yeah, it's demonic, but it's very steeped in, Judeo-Christian Catholicism. Correct. It's very steeped in that world. This is like Lord of the Rings-esque epic journey to destroy one of the 7 keys that had all the powers of evil, and they were scattered across the cosmos, and now the demons have found the one last key here on Earth, and I have been anointed the one demon knight, just like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm just another slayer in a long line of slayers, and there will be another after me. This is a great point, yeah. Something that I don't think we start getting until the 90s, because we don't start really blending those two genres in such a way. Because again, it's got this flair, it's got this cool grit and this charm, and and this weirdness. It's a movie that I think bucks a lot of conventions, but doesn't shake its hands in the air and say, "Look how we're bucking conventions." It just says, "Hey, we're doing an awesome thing." And by the end of it, you go, holy shit, did a black woman just save the entire world in a 1995 horror comedy? Or, I don't know, what do you call it? Horror adventure? It's fun. It's a fun movie, but it's scary when it's scary.
This is a good question. I had a little bit of trouble pinning it down because I think dark comedy is not necessarily appropriate, but I saw black horror comedy and I was like, okay, like that sort of makes sense to me in that comedy is the last thing in that, where I feel like dark comedies are a little bit more intense. They're not as light as this. And this movie is very light. It knows it's having fun. It wants its audience to have fun. And I think to your point about how it handles its notions of theology, it's not interested in being like, oh, if you're Christian, you're good. And if you're not Christian, then you're the devil. Or it's not really interested in the confines of that Judeo-Christian conversation on evil. It's not The Omen, right? We're not talking about the son of the devil kind of thing. We're using demons and warriors of God in a much more mythological sense. I think Legion also kind of handles things that way, if I'm recalling correctly, sort of Constantine as well. It's it is, yes, heaven and hell, but it's not doing it in a way that feels heavy-handed, guided by stuff that is established in a church.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the power behind this holiness that has put him on this quest. He's sort of been chosen. It doesn't necessarily feel benevolent so much as just so incredibly powerful that you just kind of don't have a choice but to fall in line and be the holy warrior. You get stuck in this massive feud, you might say, battle for dominance that's been going on since time immemorial. I love how epic that fucking line is when he talks about, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, but he says, but the darkness wasn't empty. Oh, shit.
Yeah, so again, it's taking inspirations, obviously, from stuff that we should mostly be familiar with, but it's turning it enough to where, we don't need to get a history lesson exactly. We learn the history of the film, but we don't need any kind of preconceived history about the existence of Jesus or any of that stuff. This movie sort of gives you everything that you need to know within the flashbacks and within his exposition. And what it does is it frees you up of any preconceived notions about how demons work, or how God would intervene in this situation or what the devil wants. No, you're left with Billy Zane, and that's what we get, and his performance, I think, really it just embodies the kind of freedom that he had in this movie, because it's not you have to play the demon a certain way. It's like you get to play the demon however you want because you're just trying to manipulate these people to get to your end. And if that's being their friend, if that's being seductive, if that's trying to trick them, like whatever it's going to be, if it's being a cowboy, you know, whatever works. And I think that's what I love about the performance the most, is that it is very unencumbered.
He is a character who clearly likes his job.
Yes, for sure.
and he's clearly used to winning. So there's so much resistance that he not only will abide, but he enjoys because it's part of the game. It's how it always goes. And that's something that I think he really brings to the character. And it's this wonderful, dangerous levity.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And I'll tell you something I never really appreciated until this watch. And that's crazy to say because I've seen this movie countless times. Breaker comes into this place, and very soon he comes to realize it's going down tonight, it's going down here, and that means that by the end of this night, only one of these people I just met is going to be alive. And he has to go on the rest of the night convincing these people to keep fighting, to stay together, to protect each other, knowing full well by the time this battle is over, only one of them is going to still be standing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love his character in that he's not Sadler's not the top bill guy in this movie. He is the lead, but then he also isn't. And I think his steadfast sense of stoicism and duty really they're sort of like a prism to shine on all of the other characters in that situation. Like he's kind of like a very familiar character. Like I said, he's like a perfect Kyle Reese in this situation, but then all of the other characters around him are much more colorful types of characters. And so his passing of the torch ends up going to the person who is sort of like the most dutiful person of them, who's going to do the right thing in the face of evil and in the face of temptation. And honestly, really, it's the two black women in the movie that are like, we're not messing with that devil shit. And I mean, it's a great choice by Erenst Dickerson. He fought for Jada to get that role because it was supposed to be Cameron Diaz, and thinking of her in an alternate reality version of this movie, I'm like, I feel like that would be trying to play up the sex appeal side of things too much, like they did with her in The Mask, which was 1994, a year before this, right? So if she's there, it's going to be too much demon is horny for her stuff, which I mean we get, but that's not the thing that defines Jada's character throughout the course of the film.
It comes off as off-putting, and it should, because there's nothing even remotely inviting about that, to the way she plays the character. If somebody like Cameron Diaz was in the role, that would have happened. There would have been this sexual projection and this damselization of the character, just because that's kind of how her hit was and her type was at the time, and she was still so early in her career. She wasn't going to play against the conventional type that a director assumes she is. Yeah, no, Erenst Dickerson saw Jada Pinkett in Don't Be a Menace, and he was like, it's got to be her. And the cool thing is that Jada showed up with that hair and said, it's got to be this hair, and they all went, oh, fuck, what? But it was the right call, and I'm not even kidding, especially with her wardrobe. And the sets and the lighting, her hair looks perfect.
It does, yeah.
It's got pop.
And speaking of showing up with hair,
do it. I love that. Yeah,
this
segue.
Most people didn't know Billy Zane was properly bald before this movie. And so Erenst Dickerson said when he met with Billy showed up with a suitcase full of wigs, saying, which wig do you want me to wear? And Erenst said, nope, you, sir, are bald, and you need to embrace that. And I think that's going to be the choice that we make for this character. And it works because, again, he feels unencumbered, right? For Billy Zane month, we did also The Mask, right? And so there's this thing of that he had to shave his head to fit into the cowl, and then when you see him with hair, and I'm like, well, that's very clearly a toupee. So I'm like, well, this is after Demon Night as well, so Like in Titanic, he's definitely wearing a hairpiece. So just the notion that like he could show up and like be his actual full authentic self without having to be like self-conscious about wearing the wig and stuff was a great like freeing experience where I think it really brings out this side of him that is so iconic. And I'm not going to throw around that word lightly because like, sure, it's a memorable role, but I think this is an iconic role in terms of not just his career, but in some of maybe like the best, most fun on-screen villainy.
Yeah, big ups. Absolutely agree. I think it's one of, if not the best thing he's ever done. I think it's one of, if not the best sort of charming horror villains of the decade. And really a quick clarification. You're speaking before about Phantom?
The Phantom, yes.
The Phantom. Okay, yeah. Man, I only saw that one time and I got to watch it again because I remember when I saw it, I enjoyed it so damn much. And I remember it was like post Endgame. Like it was way, way after that before I ever saw that movie. And I remember watching it going, I remember this was mocked at the, when it came out.
Was.
Bombed at the box office. Yep. Everyone hated it. And like history remembers it as one of those really shitty comic book movies from the 90s when everybody was chasing that Batman success and nobody could quite catch it, right?
Yeah.
And I watched this with a 2020s outlook for the first time. And I said to myself, this is fun. This seems to know what it is. This is making actual choices. You know what I mean? Like there was just so much to enjoy about that movie.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun to talk about. And that's why we're going to close out Zane Month with the Phantom. And then we're jumping from that into Superhero Month. So I'm going to use that as like a whole segue system. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Well, what do you say we take a look back at the trailer now and see exactly what Demon Knight was being marketed as to us? Before we get to the trailer, it's time for a quick word from today's sponsor. Hello, Fright fans. I'm here on behalf of our old pal, the Crypt Keeper, with a tale of the tidy. Have you ever found yourself in a sticky situation? Demon blood on the carpet, ghoul goo on your good sheets, or perhaps a little splatter from your last killer party? Well, don't lose your head. Clean instead with Demon Begone Stain Remover. That's right, boils and ghouls. Just a single spritz of Demon Begone and voila, that unholy mess is history. It works on wine, ectoplasm, even the most spirited possession stains. So the next time your humble crypt looks like a slaughterhouse, don't call an exorcist, call for Demon Begone. Because the only thing scarier than a demon in the dark is the stain they leave on your rug. Demon Begone. It's to die for. And now, back to the show. Okay. Can you see that?
I know that you are doing a screen sharing, but here we are. The image just popped up.
Okay.
All good.
Let's go.
Universal Pictures is proud to present the motion picture directing debut of one of America's most talented and respected
Interesting
artists.
choice.
Cut! Cut! Oh, hello, kiddies. So
Hello.
glad you could join me. Your pal, the Crypt Keeper, has gone Hollywood in a big way. I'm directing my first feature film. Care for a little shriek preview?
See, yeah, already we're getting the tone, we're getting the tune. It's like Creep Show.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Especially that, like, the first fake movie that they're working on.
The kind of thing you could really sink your teeth
God, I want to see all the... Yeah, I want to see all the Crypt Keeper stuff that they left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. And there's a big explosion. There we go.
A race against time.
And I gotta say, the explosion at the very end when like the hotel explodes, bit of a disappointment.
Yeah.
Come on out, everybody! It's time to play!
And the final
Yeah, I mean, this is like From Dusk Till Dawn. You know,
Yeah.
this is that, it's high octane fun, but it's definitely action horror.
It stars Billy Zane from Dead Calm, William Sadler from Die Hard 2, And Jada Pinkett from Menace to Society. Ooh, I
Oh, it
love
was
those
Menace to Society.
titles. And you'll love Demon Knight.
The demons are here!
And ladies, if
demons
you
are
think
here.
Demon Knight
I was gonna say, that's the line of the movie.
Whoa! Thank you.
Oh, yeah, kissing the damn things as they're crawling out of the ground with his glow stick blood. Fuck yeah.
Oh, Billy.
And, ending with that great Danny Elfman Tales from the Crypt theme.
God, that music's so good.
It's so good. Like, that was one thing I was a little disappointed in Bordello of Blood right off the bat the first time I saw it. They don't start out with the intro from the TV show the same way Demon Knight does. And I remember thinking, like, I get that y'all are either A, trying to quicken it up, or B, trying to evolve or something. But, like, no, stick with it. Let that be this wonderful little bookend that puts us in this nice, accepting mood before you give me this Dennis Miller nonsense. But anyway, we're here to talk about Demon Knight. Yeah. I think that sold it great. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and I think what we get out of the trailer is sort of like the notion that you want to have fun with it. Obviously, like what they're selling is there's demons, which there are, and they made sure that there were demons. And I think the demons actually, like the physical design of the demons looks pretty good to where like they're creepy enough and they're slimy enough, gooey enough to where like you don't really want to touch them. Like even if they were not scary looking, they're a little too slimy to be wanting to touch. So you really, and you get the little birth scene with them coming out of the ground, which is awesome too, because that just comes from the point in the movie that really I think is like the tipping point that sets everything off. Because, we get the car chase, we get the whole like sort of Western Terminator style stuff, and we don't know what's going on really until they're all in the bar, and Billy is still, he's working the system as best he can. He feels like he's got law enforcement on his side, so things are going well. And then as soon as it's like, okay, well, everybody's coming down to the station, you hear Breaker say like, he's not who he says he is or something like that. And Billy, he gives him a line like, well, might as well find out now. He turns around, he punches a hole through the sheriff's head, and it's gnarly, man. Like, it is a great shot, and I love that they cut to the rest of the cast, and you got CCH Pounder, like, vomiting up some corn or something, whatever she was eating, just comes flying out. It's such a great way to up the ante in that film, and so my memory of it was like, oh, this happens within the first 10 minutes. And it doesn't. It happens like at the end of the first act, basically. That's what gets us into act 2. And that's when it's like, oh, he goes outside after he's cast aside from the key, and he throws off the hat and the jacket. And then we see who he really is. And that scene is just so damn good that it sets the tone for the rest of the movie.
Everything leading up to that is great, too. It's a really good table setting. We're doing your sort of proper siege thing. Once we get there, we know we're not leaving here. Look at all of these characters. Look at all of these sort of different representations, different walks of life of this seedy little burg, Wormwood, New Mexico. And everybody has a little snippet worth of a backstory that you get pretty quickly, pretty easily. We have some relationship dynamics with Charles Fleischer as Wally, Brenda Bakke as Cordelia, and Gary Farmer as Deputy Bob. But it does set off, and with this first siege moment, we learn so much about the rules of these heretofore unseen, unheard of demons. These aren't vampires, right? This isn't the creature from the Black Lagoon. This is not something that exists in our, fucking media understanding or lexicon. There's the word I want. So, we have to establish what are the rules of these creatures. And the movie, I think, brilliantly does that in this first sequence. That you've got to get them in the eyes, that the blood seal will create a seal, and if they cross through that, that will kill them. But also that when you hit them in the eyes, it's kind of like Alien. You got to watch out because something's going to come out of there that could injure you or kill you even. and cause destruction. So even killing these things is dangerous, and we need to be careful about that. We learn all of that right away. We sure as fuck learn that Breaker's been fighting these things long enough that he knows how to keep us safe, so we probably should listen to the motherfucker. And Billy Zane gives us one of the most hysterical runs of gibberish and swearing that anyone had seen up to that point in the decade in cinema. I mean, this was a moment. It was packed.
Yeah, it was like a Ned Flanders moment where he's like, enough with this ho dunk, po dunk, hi diddly ding dong crap. And I love that he kind of like does a little dance there too while he's doing it. And then we get that, you know, the whole this place is condemned and the tossing of the blood, because like we still don't know what's going to happen at that point. Like we obviously know that he's some sort of creature or entity or something, but he cuts his hand open, he starts oozing, and then he's like spilling the ooze everywhere, and we still don't know what's happening. Why is he spilling ooze? And then the ooze opens up and the little baby demons start rising from hell, I assume, and that gets us a very like extra gooey moment as well, and like the slime on him when he's giving him a little smooch as the little baby's growing. You really just, I think at that point, you take all of the influences that had sort of inspired the movie up until the end of that first third, and then you don't necessarily take it all away, but you package it and you now give it to the people that are in your movie and you let them run with it. And Billy, first and foremost, is the guy who I think obviously steals the show. But, you know, I think we're going to end up saying this probably quite a lot. Like everybody else in this movie, I think holds their own, even though Billy's presence is so big, so charismatic, so cartoonish in moments. Everybody else still really holds it down. And like, even in this world, we can still recognize that like Roach is a gross piece of shit, right? Like we still, like when he dies, we're like, yeah, that probably should have happened. I'm on Billy's side for this one. And what makes that moment even better is that Breaker, he looks out and sees that this has just happened. He's still like, fuck. And he like puts his head against the wall and he's like, I still didn't want to see that guy die because that's who I am. And so you just like really get these little subtle touches in the storytelling that doesn't like have to spoon feed you. It doesn't have to beat you over the head. It doesn't have to remind you of like what you're supposed to be cheering for. It just lets you experience it in a very organic way that I feel like has been stripped from a lot of more modern storytelling.
Something else I really like about the movie that I never appreciated until this rewatch, and I think this is just speaking to what a good siege flick it is.
Yeah, it is
that they are constantly fighting, battling, problem solving, and they are always still losing. They're just losing very, very slowly. But everything they do just cuts off, just leads to them being more cut off and more enclosed, and it leads to more people in their team getting killed or turned and then killed. And it really struck me as it's just such a great way to have tension and pace just constantly through the movie, to have it that they're always fighting, they're always working at shit, and yet they are still very slowly losing.
Yeah, it's almost like cinematic quicksand in that like the more you struggle, the more adamantly the more ground you lose each time. And so it's like they find their escape route, demons in there, you know, they finally like get the seal on that thing, moron shoots his way through it. So like each little thing is just like it's getting tighter and tighter on them, and I love that because it just keeps pushing the tension. And I mean, if you look at the archetypes broadly, I think you could probably blindly be like, all right, this person's not going to make it, this person's not going to make it, probably not this person, probably not this person. You could probably narrow it down to like 2 characters that might make it out at the end. And you would probably be right if you really like did the homework as like a horror fan, like you could probably pick them off. But the thing that I sort of honed in on this time that maybe I don't always take a look at was specifically CCH Pounder's character, because she is the boss of this establishment. And even when shit is hitting the fan, even when some stranger came in here and basically like not only cost her her home, her job, her arm, her life, she still is in control, and she lets him know that. You know, even in the moment where she knows that like her road is probably going to end, she doesn't let that stop her from being like, you're following my lead at this point, not vice versa. And she takes her fate into her own hands. And I love that like Deputy Bob is like, we're doing this together. Like, we're going out in a blaze of glory. They have this like very sweet relationship between them that early on in the movie, I don't remember it being this thing of like they're romantically entangled. Maybe he's had like a crush on her for a long time, and they kind of both have this understanding of she's not really going to be into it, but he is not going to stop loving her kind of thing. And the more that the circumstances sort of close in around them, like the closer they get to the point where we're going to die together. I'm not letting you do this by yourself. And I was like, that's such a sweet moment in the middle of all this chaos. And it feels very genuine.
It's a moment of tenderness.
Yeah.
In this moment of sacrifice. And even as a kid watching this late at night on HBO, that moment spoke to me. And I didn't have words for it, but I had this thing of like, aw, like, aw. And it's not the kind of thing that a horror movie usually bothers to put in. But when you have characters this rich and actors this good, thankfully you also had a director who gave a shit. And so we have these little tender moments between these really well-drawn characters that are just filled with life. And CCH Pounder is just one of my favorite actresses. I've just loved her in everything I've seen her in. She's one of those people who, when they pop up, you go, oh, fuck yeah, she's in this? It's so great to watch her in this and see the way she interacts with folks. Like after she yells at Cordelia, or she yells in Cordelia's direction, get that pussy off the table, and Cordelia hops off, and she kind of has this smirk on her face. She kind of cocks her chin in a certain way and kind of points down a little with a little, and goes, I was talking about the cat. And it, to me, when I was younger, I used to think of that as a really cheap joke. But now watching it, and I don't know what kind of bias I've grown into, but now watching it, because of the nonverbal cues happening between them, it speaks to me about a kind of intimacy and camaraderie in their relationship. There's a playful, friendly, bantery kind of a way about them. And especially coming from CCH Pounder, I found that moment so much more charming than I ever had before.
Yeah, and I think like contextually, like she knows who Cordelia is. Cordelia rents rooms by the hour in her establishment because she's a prostitute. Like she knows who she is, but also she's a regular. So she treats her as such. She's like, we have an established relationship. I see you all the time. You're usually banging the same dude. And then you got Wally coming in here who's paying you to talk to him. So like she knows exactly the dynamic that exists under her roof. And I think that's what makes her such a great character, is that like she is pretty much as in control as she can be still of her establishment while all this is going on. And that little sort of nod, that sort of very interpersonal tease that she's giving her by saying like, get that pussy off the table. She's like, I was talking to the cat, but I was also talking to you.
Well, and I also love Irene is savage. Like later on when she's going to town with Roach and everyone can hear it, and Wally comes back with the laundry and she's like, just leave the sheets by the stairs, Wally. She's gonna need clean sheets soon enough. I was like, oh, savage.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's only like 6 people in the place, and this is, at night, so she's got the few people to keep the lights on for her, so, make sure that the sheets are changed. She's running kind of like a whorehouse, but also a bar, restaurant. It's everything that it needs to be for the sake of this movie, and I'm glad that, she's an entrepreneur like that.
Wormwood is like the new Deadwood, so this is, sort of a, one-stop shop for all of these needs.
Yeah, and it does have like the Western element. I think that's why we see the collectors wearing that outfit. I think that's why in a film like Dusk Till Dawn, we know Tarantino is a big Western lover. So I think that's why we have that similar setting there, where it's almost like the saloon environment, where it's the place in town where all the different walks of life come to congregate. And so you get a lot of conflicts in those environments, which is why it is such a common thing to use in Westerns, because that's where the conflict happens. So, you know, she just does such a great job of really breathing like so much, I think, richness into the corners of that character that we don't see. Like the stuff on the page is one thing. Her portrayal of it tells me so many different things about Irene that are never actually spoken. I think that's what I love about the performance so much.
And I'll say something else about Jada Pinkett. The character of Geraldine, I think, is drawn in such a wonderful, archetypical way. I think that if you're really zoned into the movie, I think that about halfway through, about the time Breaker tells the story of how he became the Demon Knight, I think you should probably say to yourself, oh, okay, so Jada Pinkett is going to be the new Demon Knight. I mean, when they're down in those mines, she finds the little boy. She gets him out of there, and she immediately goes into action, but she protects that kid. I'm in my head like, dude, this girl is showing signs of hero right off the bat. Also, she's clearly been, persecuted against and thrown in, probably also, through the criminal justice system, having, committed a crime of theft, certainly out of necessity, and almost certainly didn't have legal resources that were going to get her the best deal possible. So she got a shit deal, and she's doing this like work release program right now where, let's be honest, her labor is abused and taken advantage of, because Irene is awesome and like a great character, but by no means a completely moral person. So you definitely get the impression that she kind of runs Geraldine like a servant, but Geraldine says to herself, well, it's technically better than prison, so I'll bitch only so much about that. So, and Breaker, I think, can really relate to someone like that, who's rough around the edges, but clearly has a good heart. He takes a shine to her right away, and I think both actors do such a great job of demonstrating that. And I don't have anywhere else to bring this up, so I just want to say right now, the shot where he realizes the cops are there for him, and he grabs her, kicks the chair back, and pulls out the knife and puts it to her throat, all in one move. Oh my God, that shot is awesome. It just looks so good.
You probably got to rehearse that a few times, because you're not going to get that chair kick perfectly. You're not going to get the knife out perfectly. So you probably run through that a lot. And, I want to give a little bit more credit to Ernest R. Dickerson, who directed this film, because I think, number one, without a black filmmaker at the helm who had prior, like he made Juice, right? That was his first movie. So like, if you don't have that guy making this movie, a lot of the things that we just spoke about with Geraldine's character don't come to fruition. And especially if the studio has their way and they cast somebody else in that role, like you come across with a much less complicated character. And I think her being a complicated character to some degree makes her more worthy of being the Demon Knight in the end. She, like, becoming the heir apparent requires like being a little bit messy, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and there's great visual storytelling at play. Her room is one of the only rooms we see, and it's got all those posters of Paris. Fucking It's a Wonderful Life over here. Paris, Rio de Janeiro, beautiful places that George wants to take his wife to. Geraldine wants to go to, excuse me. But I'm serious, and I think that the flashback from Breaker is really well drip fed to us, just through a lot of imagery and some flashes when he will, catch sight of something that sort of takes him back to that moment. Because what we learned is that when you become the Demon Knight, you don't just inherit the quest, you inherit the memory of every Demon Knight that came before you, and all those experiences and all that knowledge, all the way back to the crucifixion of Christ, where this all began. And that's a bit of a mind bomb that you need to fucking tackle. And it seems you also need to manage it. And it's not necessarily the easiest thing. It's like this huge PTSD bubble inside you. that's always pulsating. And I think it just gets stronger as the stars align.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the burden that you take on as the Demon Knight isn't just like the defender of this purpose. It's like, oh, you're getting the cosmic key, so to speak, and opens your mind maybe a little bit too wide. So you have to have the right kind of mind to be able to handle that. So somebody who, like Geraldine, is aspirational, but also dutiful, but also wants to like still continue to like be a good person in the face of adversity, I think cues, yes, the audience into the fact that like, yeah, by a reasonable process of deduction, it's going to be her.
Did you just make a Masters of the Universe reference?
Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. We're bringing it full circle for people that listen to both of our shows.
Ba, 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 ba. But, you know, what we were saying before about Ernest Dickerson and Jada Pinkett, and really also what a great character CCH Pounder has, and how she is a black woman in charge, and not in kind of a comical aw shucks, but she serves the young white idiot way. No, she's fucking in charge, right? She accepts her part in this epic fucking quest. She accepts the weight of what has been thrust upon them. But this is her goddamn hotel. She says what goes around here. And I think that that's something else that we need to remember the 90s for. This was the first chunk of the 90s. This was the time of Candyman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was, I think, part of a growing movement of black voices and black creatives taking a greater control over their depictions of themselves in the genre and breaking out of so many molds that they had been stuck in for so long, where it was like, look, do you want to work or not? If you want to work, you're going to accept this little mold that the white writer and the white director has created for you. And, you know, credit where credit's due. There were a lot of those white writers and white directors who actually listened and would collaborate and would make changes. But that wasn't the norm. And there was no incentive to be that kind of an ally in that creative situation. So just all that to say that this is really part of a bigger progressive wave than I definitely ever gave it credit for.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I mean, that the horror trope of like the black character dies first, like came somewhere, right? Like in the horror genre, especially, like if you were the black character, I'm like, all right, well, I expect this person to be gone early in the movie because I've been conditioned to expect that. So movies that sort of, like you said, bucked the trend and didn't stick with convention at the time, like deserve credit where credit is due. And I actually forgot to ask you earlier, if you think about this movie from like an outsider's perspective, why do you think people would actually say that this is a bad movie?
I think people have a knee-jerk aversion to horror. You know, I think we've talked about that before. So I think anybody who considers themselves a critic is likely to dismiss something that's horror, especially in the mid-90s or early 90s, when it was still perfectly acceptable to do so if you were a legitimate film critic. I think that the January release hurts a movie with this tone. I think that this movie has more weirdness and comedy than and charm and style and than most horror films of that time were expected to be. And so I feel like for a lot of reasons this movie was sort of shunned based on knee-jerk reactions from folks at the time. In a lot of ways, I think this movie was ahead of its time.
Yeah, I think so too, because it sort of like made a more present kind of horror comedy palatable in a way that still it represents horror properly, where I think some horror comedies feel the need to be like, oh, well, we're more a comedy that's using horror as like either a marketing tool or you're using it as maybe a crutch to the idea of the comedy. But this is a movie that is like a horror idea first and then a comedy within the concept of the world that we've created versus being written as a comedy and then adding the horror element to make it a horror comedy, I think.
Well, and what else is nice is that to be really basic about it, it's funny to the collector, right? Billy Zane, he thinks this is hilarious. Nobody else in this cast nobody else in the story finds it funny. You know, they're not dropping one-liners and shit.
Yeah, and if you take that collector character and you sort of like stone face him and you remove all the personality and you make him the Terminator, like, yeah, you still have a film that functions with the story that you put forward, but then you're just doing the Terminator as demons.
And he loses all its charm, and he doesn't become the alluring villainous demon because he is sexy and he is alluring and he is charming. That moment when he wipes Cordelia's tears away with ghost fingers, that's so fucking breathtaking, and it looks great. And the dancing that he does with Jada Pinkett later in the movie, I mean, that was all Billy Zane's suggestion. That all came from how he kind of reshaped this character. And you can't think of this character any other way.
No, that's a great point, in that his spin on it became so distinct that it's probably the thing that, you know, I remembered the movie for the most. I mean, it is the reason that this movie was included in Billy Zane Month, but I also feel like now, having just watched it again recently, I could have made excuses to do this for like another horror month or something like that. I might have been able to like work my way back to this somehow, because it does have a lot of stuff there that I think there's just so much more good than there is bad, that it's really hard for me to reconcile the notion that like critics were so down on it. But I know you had mentioned earlier in the show that you had like a couple of nitpicky things that were like particular. So I'm curious what those things were.
So, and these are nitpicks. It's like when you forced to acknowledge that something isn't perfect, right?
Yeah. Bummer. But let's hear it.
So the sound design in this movie is not particularly great.
Fair.
And there are a number of moments that they incorporate big cat sound effects, like a leopard going like shit like that. And it's kind of silly. I kind of shrug. I'm like, I'm not saying I have a solution. And I know that there's those great iconic stories about like a lion's roar mixed with a elephant farting was the T-Rex, and you know, it's amazing. But I think here it's kind of, you kind of cock your head to the side like a dog every time it happens. What? Are we still doing that? Also, and this only happens a couple of times, but like there's these moments where we're a close up on a demon face or a demon hand, and the camera doesn't shake, but the object in frame does, really fast, back and forth. And it's this weird shaky head or shaky hand. And it's, I don't know, I guess it's just supposed to look demonic, or it's supposed to be like not off-putting, but disorienting or something like that. But it just sort of, I don't know how else to say it. It just looks like ass. And I mentioned before the final explosion of the hotel I found very underwhelming. It's like this thing where they have flame superimposed on top of an explosion. I'm guessing that was a miniature. I don't know that for a fact, but most miniature explosions I've seen are a lot more spectacular. There's like no flame on that. It's just kind of a burst. So I'm guessing they only got one take on it, and they had like a VFX fire on top that they overlaid, but the color correction on that isn't so good. So it don't look so good. And the blast with the two cars at the beginning is amazing. So it kind of makes you go, man, come on.
Yeah, we used up all our gasoline and pyro on the first car crash.
Yeah, exactly. And final thing, and this was just a continuity error that they didn't catch and they couldn't fix, and it is what it is. After Jada Pinkett is covered in blood, she gets gently washed off in the shower. Mm-hmm. And then for the rest of her sequence, she is in the whitest of white underwear and undershirt and socks it is comically unrealistic that they could have gotten that clean from just the shower doing its thing. And it's just because they shot those out of sequence and they were so concerned with so many other things that it kind of slipped them by until the final edit when there was nothing they could do. And like, again, I am like pulling my nails out of my hands. I'm trying to come up with things that are not perfect. So like that's on my little nitpicky list. That's all I got, man. That's literally all I got in the negative for this. And so I think it's just that at the time people were dismissing horror, and especially if horror wasn't coming in the pre-prescribed package that we all agreed was what horror was allowed to be because of the 80s and how the 80s kind of commodified everything. And so I think that's what it was. Audiences are just dumb.
Yeah. I'll be curious when we get to Critics Corner to see if there are specific comments about like them not liking Jada as the hero, because it wouldn't entirely shock me to be like, oh, a movie made by a black filmmaker with two strong black female leads is like off-putting to a large percent of the audience that maybe the movie was intended for. Wouldn't be shocked at all. I mean, we see it still now. I mean, you and I are both online a lot, like, oh, there's a casting choice made here, and fucking people are just mad because like the skin color, and it's just like, oh God. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that.
Can you imagine the manosphere's take on this movie if it came out in 2025?
Right.
Completely as it is.
This movie's too woke.
Yeah, you see these two women of color bossing around the capable, high-level male who was a war hero. He's a war hero. Does anybody talk about the fact that he's a war hero? Facing down the demons. But no, this black lady, and I'm going to call her a black lady. I know that offends some people. She's going to be the new demon knight. Well, she hasn't earned it. Damn Mary Sue apparently can do anything. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. Dude, we are too much.
But yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of how easy it is to imagine that take exists. So, like, I really ultimately would not be shocked. But we're not quite there yet. And before we get there, we still got to do some trivia.
Oh, shit.
You ready for some trivia, sir?
Oh, my God. Gimme. I'm all about it.
Time for trivia.
Okay, so as we've talked about a little bit, Demon Knight was part of a planned trilogy. And at the end of the credits in this film, the Crypt Keeper pops up and he teases a New Orleans-based zombie sequel called Dead Easy. What was the planned third film of that trilogy?
The only answer I have, and I don't even know if this is accurate, but I believe the original plan was to have Quentin Tarantino's film From Dusk Till Dawn be their third movie, but that fell through before it could become official.
That would make sense because it feels at home with this movie. Like they're both sort of siege movies. They're both sort of at like a titty twister type establishment in the middle of nowhere. But at least what I read was that it was Dead Easy was actually supposed to be the first one, I think. And then Demon Knight, and then Body Count is the title of the third movie. But Body Count and Dead Easy never actually were made.
Oh, damn. We got to make this happen. Where's Ernest Dickerson, man? Is he still working?
He does a lot of TV stuff, like as far as I can tell. I mean, he made maybe two more movies. Bones was one of the movies he made with Snoop Dogg after this. And I mean, like if you watch this movie and then you watch Bones, like you're like, yeah, definitely same dude. But he's just done a lot of television directing, like a couple episodes here and there. Raised by Wolves, Bosch, worked on the Purge series, House of Cards, Man in the High Castle. So there's a lot of like one episode stuff here and there. And then his most recent film's called Double Play. It's from 2017, but I have not seen it. But I do think with all of the sort of remakes that we get just ham-fisted into cinema at this point, I think it's worth looking at movies that were sort of like on the cusp of something like there's so many more movies that I think are in that territory that really are primed for a revisit with either a different set of eyes or a different script or a different kind of intent, or someone who really understands the, not necessarily failures, but the shortcomings of the original and wants to take that on. I don't think Demon Knight is a movie that's so full of shortcomings that it necessarily is the kind of movie that needs to be remade, but I think you could very, very easily make a good sequel to this movie right now.
Big agree. I think they could totally set up Dead Easy and Body Count as, 2-picture Tales from the Crypt, movie deal, and scare up great actors to come in and give really good performances, getting directors like Erenst Dickerson to come in and give that kind of same magical flair that we had for Demon Knight. And it can be like a spiritual sequel. Shit. Later this month, we've got the Toxic Avenger remake. That's got Elijah Wood, Kevin Bacon, Peter Dinklage. I mean, we're primed. We've got really high caliber actors who love doing this kind of work. And it would be so, and John Cassier's still around. There is absolutely an audience built in who would just foam at the mouth to see the Crypt Keeper back in proper form in an actual practical, puppet doing his thing, making his dead puns and shit. I think it would do gangbusters.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would be first in line to see a Demon Knight movie right now. I mean, Billy's still around?
That's the thing, man. William Sadler's still around. And he's still... Wait, is he?
I think so, yes.
He's still kicking ass. I remember him in VFW, which is another really kick-ass Siege movie, right? And he's just... I mean, hot damn, that dude, he's just got charisma and charm, and it's insane. But I'm sorry, we got more trivia to do.
We do, and we'll piggyback on that first question. And so a different Tales from the Crypt trilogy was eventually completed with which two films?
Okay, so I'm guessing we're going to call it Bordello of Blood and Ritual?
Correct. Look at that. Both of them.
But the fun thing about Ritual is that that's not really a Tales from the Crypt movie.
No, but...
Yeah, it wasn't ever conceived as one. It wasn't ever made as one. It just kind of was a straight-to-video fucking VOD thing, and they slapped the name Tales from the Crypt on it to just get more eyes and hopefully get more interest.
We promised a trilogy.
Exactly. We promised a trilogy, but I don't know. I can't remember. I think Tim Curry is in it.
Yeah, Jennifer Grey, Craig Schaefer, good cast too.
Yeah, I hear it's awful, but I still want to watch it just to know that I did.
Yeah, that's fair. We got to complete the trilogy because I know you and I have both seen Bordello of Blood.
Brother, I rewatched it just the other night because I own a double pack of Demon Knight Bordello of Blood. So after Demon Knight finished, I was like, well, I'm still kind of looking up stuff online over here, so I don't see why I shouldn't put Bordello of Blood on. Like, let's just let this party keep going. And that movie, I'm telling you, as much as like throughout all of Demon Knight, I kept yelling back at the TV. Like every time Billy Zane said anything, I just repeated it back at him because it made me laugh so much. As I'm watching Bordello of Blood, I'm like laughing. I'm having the best time, but I'm also shaking my head going, my God, this was a step down. Like this is just, I really wanted a third one, but you can't really want that when the second one was so bad. It's like, who's going to do this? Who's going to give money to do this after the second one? And I love Corey Feldman. And at the time, I loved Dennis Miller. So like, and the whole wraparound with the Crypt Keeper and the mummy and everything was so cute and fun. So like, and hey, come on. It came out when I was of an age. I like boobs as much as the next guy. And there's a lot of them in Bordello of Blood. Like
all the boobs that you didn't get to see in Demon Knight or that you only saw briefly in Demon Knight. There's
exactly. That one scene. That one scene is many scenes.
17 takes.
Yeah, but I love the old man who runs the mortuary. He's fucking hysterical. He's such an asshole.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that one. I know that I was like excited for it. Like I didn't even know what a bordello was at the time, but I was like, oh, Dennis Miller, he's on TV all the time. I know him. And it's the sequel to Demon Knight. This has got to be good, right? And no, not so much, but it has its charms. It's not on the same level though.
Yeah, and it's got Chris Sarandon. You know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's hysterical. He's like this ridiculous Southern televangelist.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. Like, I don't have that double feature DVD, but like not that long ago, I had a weird ass dream that I was at some like indie video shop, and like all of this is like super unfamiliar stuff, and like the collector's edition DVD that I was getting was Bordello of Blood, and I was like, in what universe am I even thinking about this movie, let alone having it seep into my subconscious to the point where I want like a special Vinegar Syndrome 4K that I drove to like another state for.
Get that Steelbook, man. You hear about the Steelbook 4K release? Oh my god. Yeah, no, dude, it's so worth watching if you're a fan of Tales from the Crypt. It's
for sure.
You know, if you are, then you are of a generation, you know what I mean? You are of an age, if you even know what this is. But yeah, Demon Knight is just leaps and bounds so much better than it. And it would have been lovely if Bordello of Blood, even with its goal, even with its stated plot, or at least structure, right? Like,
yeah.
Even with that, I feel like they could have done the work to put out something that was as satisfying as Demon Knight, that actually cared about its characters and that took time to show some dynamics and build some relationships and have fun. It was just so sleazy and clunky and off-putting. It was not exactly in the same way that when someone's watching a porn, they're like, okay, get through the scene already. It's not that bad, but there's moments where it's like, all right, somebody better start chomping down on someone's neck or taking their clothes off, or I'm going to get seriously bored.
Well, like knowing that Demon Knight was a script that was around before Tales from the Crypt, like I feel like Bordello of Blood is distinctly more Tales from the Crypt than Demon Knight, and it's sort of like it's not necessarily Bordello of Blood's fault that things just sequenced out the way that they did, because if Demon Knight didn't exist and you were given Bordello of Blood in a vacuum as a Tales from the Crypt movie, it's like, yeah, that's what I expect. But then the fact that we know that there was this other thing that came from that brand and was like so much better, then we're like, well, yeah, this is a big step down.
Yeah, and also I do sort of feel sorry for that production, because I think because Demon Knight did resonate with the fan base, but I think also they were worried about diminishing returns on finance. I think they fast-tracked Bordello
to like get it out.
Yeah, I think it came out like, what'd you say, like 1 year?
96.
Yeah.
1996. I don't know why I said that with water in my mouth like an idiot.
Yeah, 96, a goddamn year later, so that was really pushed out very quickly, and I'm willing to bet, without having done any research to confirm, that the original idea for what the budget was going to be for that got slashed.
Yeah, probably. But speaking of original ideas, we've got a third question on trivia. Look, I learned from you, man. I'm learning the segues. So there was as I mentioned during the production notes, there were 2 scripts written, and the original draft of the script was then used to, I think, create a novelization of the story. And Breaker's character had a different name in that early script. Do you know what his name was?
I'm going to say Silas.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah! I need to get my hands on that book, because until doing research for our episode today, I did not know the book existed. And I'm more interested in reading it because it deviates from the script we have. It goes into all this other stuff that isn't in the movie at all.
Yeah, and I think that's like sort of a good way to do it, in that it's like almost like a companion piece to fill in a lot of the details of this world that are interesting, but are sort of left up to your imagination a little bit when watching the movie. But you did really well on the trivia. You got 3 out of the 4 possible points on the board. And so we head over to our wheel, our bonus wheel of crazy questions. And it's a great one to start because we already talked about it a little bit. So if you had to pitch a sequel right now, what is your absurd elevator pitch for a Demon Knight sequel?
We get Jada Pinkett back. she has been living as a demon knight. She's been getting into teeny tiny skirmishes here, there, and wherever, but it's never directly about the key. So she's getting a little despondent. She's getting a little bit of the malaise because she's had to survive so much. And sure enough, she finds herself smack dab in the middle of the stars aligning. I don't have a compelling place for that to happen. It can't be a hotel in Wormwood, New Mexico. It's got to be somewhere diametrically opposed to that. Maybe a dystopian urban setting, kind of like in that DS9 episode where they go back in time to the Bell riots and they're in those sanctuary cities. So it's just like this massive tent city, but it's like the size of, a third of LA is just a big fat tent city. Or like maybe mix that with the Peachtree Towers in Judge Dredd. Some kind of blend there, and that's sort of the reality that she's living under. Because we know that the demon knights live and live and live until they have to do the thing, she could be way in the future. And so we could kind of go to that place. And she's got to find a new demon knight by the end of the night when the demons rise. I don't know who our compelling villain is going to be, who's going to sort of be the collector, but it can't just be another Billy Zane. It's got to be somebody with their own swagger and their own way of doing things. Yeah. And I don't love this, but in as much... No, what I'm about to say.
Okay.
In as much as it's fun to subvert when you're doing things like this, perhaps at the end, the person she thinks is going to be the demon knight and she's totally ready to give it over and do the ultimate sacrifices themselves instead for whatever reason. And so the subversion is that Jada Pinkett doesn't get to die. She has to keep being the demon knight. It's not actually, and like maybe the stars remix on her hand. And maybe, that could set us up for a sequel because she's pissed off that she doesn't get to just rest. And that's how we end. So that sets us up for the sequel. And then the sequel, she's promised, like, the cosmos, you might say, like, and we're the screenwriters, we're the gods that are promising her character. The next one, you will get to die and it'll be epic, we promise.
Yeah, Jada, what's Jada doing right now? I don't know.
Nick, you keep Jada Pinkett's name out your fucking mouth. I'm sorry, I couldn't stop myself.
No, you're right. Well, if she's available and she wants to do a sequel, I will watch it. So hopefully somebody will finance it.
Oh my God, me too. I would watch the shit out of that.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think the original movie leaves off in a good enough place where it's like, even if you just want to kick the can down the road from that ending, say 50, 60, 100 years, you could still technically have the same collector and still Jada. And it's still like the two of them caught in this just like timeless tug of war that is going to go on between these characters basically forever until, until one of the demon knights loses. So like you always just have that sort of at play.
I like the idea of Billy Zane as a Hannibal Lecter-esque character, someone that she's able to contact to get some counsel. Let me get some perspective from someone I've killed, someone I've beaten, and because of new demonic things, she can access the consciousness of a demon that she's defeated if he's high level enough. I know who makes up these rules. And,
maybe
so it's like Hannibal Lecter.
Skull was laying around or something. And she like grabbed his skull as a trophy and she can talk to him through it. I mean, Billy's around. Let's do it.
Yeah, Billy's around and it would make enough sense and it would be fun for at least a scene or two. And we don't need any more than that.
That's fair.
But he could offer some insight on the collector if she's trying to battle another collector and she needs some insight or some help. That could be fun.
Speaking of a scene or two, the next question off the wheel, you have to sell this movie on a single scene. So what is the scene that makes this movie?
The single scene that makes this movie is in the hotel after the cops arrive and Breaker is scared and the tension escalates and escalates and we have these power shifts where it seems the collector has won because the cops seem to be on his side, but then the cops say, no, we're arresting you too. So we have another swing because Breaker is terrified because he knows about the bomb that's about to explode and nobody else understands. And it culminates in a man punching his fist through another man's head, ripping it off, and then yelling heads up and throwing it at somebody, and everyone freaking out. And then he cuts his hand open and rises demons out of the fucking earth and sort of looks at them as if to say, oh, it's on now, bitches. Like, you could just clip that whole sequence and that sells the movie.
I mean, when I was pulling clips to do the little like rip reel for this month, that one was definitely one of them because I cut it too to where he like punches him in the head, and then the next scene is like someone pushing open double doors.
So good. We've got to do a quick shout out to Nix over at the Cinema Shit Show because he apparently met the actor who played the sheriff.
John Shook.
Yes. Yeah. Apparently, like at a con or something.
Oh, cool.
And apparently, this guy's a real asshole.
Wow.
I'm just quoting. I'm quoting our friend Nix. Nix, if I'm misquoting you, hit me up or hit up Nick over here.
Our people will talk to your people.
Exactly. And, we'll get the correction in. But I'm almost positive I remember you saying this during a discussion, and I wanted to get it out as a fun fact.
Well, one of the like little bonus trivia items that I came across was that Billy Zane like didn't want to do that to that character because he liked the actor, and him and his dad used to watch his TV show in the 70s, and so he had an affinity for this guy. But yeah, I don't know anything about him personally, so.
Me neither. I remember, I never forgot that because Nick said this one time, and it was, anytime somebody says something about Demon Knight, it's going to stick in my head.
Okay, well, speaking of things that are going to stick in your head, what line of dialogue would you want on a t-shirt? Ironically, unironically, what line of dialogue from the movie would you want on a shirt?
Oh, damn. Give me just a sec, because I wrote down a few quotes.
Nice.
So it's got to be one of those, right?
Well, maybe.
I know, right? Because some of them are just like, hey, they hate that. After he spits on him and they yell. Yeah. So yeah, that's not obviously going to be something.
I think I'll give you one right here since I had thought about this a little bit. If I could include like a graphic, make it a graphic tee, the one with Billy Zane holding the bottle called Long Hard One.
Yes, 100 times yes. All right, if I was gonna do a quote on a t-shirt, it's a Billy Zane quote. Humans, you're not worth the flesh you're printed on.
He despises us so much.
If I could have a t-shirt that's a GIF with like the words appearing as it happens, it would be Billy Zane throwing off the hat and the jacket going, you hold down, goddamn motherfuckers. Oh my God. And the best part is I've seen this before on TV where they had to edit for language, right? Mm. And so the overlay for that is like, you old down gosh darn dang old melon eaters. all you had to do was give me the blasted key.
Oh, melon eaters. I don't think I've heard that one ever before.
I know. Gotta start incorporating that. Goddamn melon eaters. What are you even saying? Actually, come to think of it, no, that's enough. What's the word? We have enough evidence there. That's got some racial connotations to it, doesn't it?
Oh, it might, yeah. It definitely, like, who was dubbing that? Who ADR'd that choice? It
was James Woods. He was overseeing the the work.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's get back on track. Let's go to more or less, and you just tell me one thing you want more of from the film and one thing that you want less of.
So we spoke about this a little bit already, that we really both clearly have an affinity for the relationship that's hinted at between Irene and Deputy Bob. And for my money, I don't care if there is something between them in their history, or if there's something unspoken, or if it's just that over the course of this night, they've kind of been there for each other and they've stepped up and done more in this action setting than either of them ever thought they'd ever have to do in their lives. And it's this moment of tenderness that we're getting from them that's so rich. I would have loved one little scene where the two of them talked a bit and just shared a few things about where they're at, how they're dealing with this, and maybe how they used to think about each other versus how they think about each other now. Because we get to a point where they're the only ones alive besides little Danny Boy and Breaker and Geraldine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would have liked just a little bit of them. It might have fucked up the pace, but I don't care. I love those actors, and I would have liked to see a little more character work between the two of them.
Well, it's like they give us that scene, but then they spend all of the scene talking about how Wally was going to go postal. So it's
that's
like
Expo, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that's pure Expo. And that's also super 90s. We've got a postal worker who was tooling up. And who was it? It was Roger Rabbit. Watch out. Dude, forget it. And he's great. He's great in the movie. I think, I love Charles Fleischer. He always turns in a good performance.
Yeah, he is very good. I think one of my favorite scenes is where Breaker is telling him to like shoot him in the eyes, but he doesn't give him the like info that there's going to be like some massive demon recoil after you shoot him in the eyes, and just lets him get lit up by that demon lightning.
He just goes flying.
He does.
So I guess less, I think I already spoke about this, I could have done less of their sound design where the demons do the big cat growls and the leopard. Less of that I could have done with.
That's fair. I think it makes up for it in the fact that it's got a great soundtrack. So I will give it kudos in that, like, its overall sound, when I think of the movie, I think more of the needle drops and how it sounds musically than the hissy demons.
The music is wicked, I will agree. And not just the soundtrack, the score also really, really slaps.
Yeah. Like I said, it was really difficult to like try to frame this in the context of like, oh, it's got some like key weaknesses that I can clearly see why people would say this is a bad movie. Like most of the time I'll watch a movie, even when I like it, I'm like, oh, people are going to think this movie sucks. But I can very clearly and quickly make that distinction. With this movie, having seen it many, many times, I really can't put my finger on the thing that would hold it down, other than, yes, critics are not particularly apt to horror films. So it could be that. And maybe at the time that it came out, like nobody is like, hey, it's January, we're in the mood for this kind of thing, which could hurt it. But yeah, realistically, I couldn't be like, hey, there's some glaring weakness in this movie that I feel really drags it into the sort of bad movie territory. I feel like this is actually a good movie.
Big agree, especially when you're judging it for what it's trying to be. It's not trying to be the King's Speech.
It's not. Introduce Billy Zane into that movie, and we're cooking with fire. We're cooking with hot grease, I think, and then maybe there's a grease fire as a result. But okay, well, do you have anything else that you wanted to like really make sure that we got on the books before we move on and hear exactly why people thought this was a bad movie?
I just want to, as quickly as possible, highlight the importance of Tales from the Crypt to the trajectory of William Sadler as a film actor.
Yeah.
The dude's been in fucking everything. He auditioned for the pilot episode of Tales from the Crypt. For a smaller part, he asked to audition for a much bigger part. And while after being told no, because you're too attractive for that role, we already talked about it, he's walking to his car, the casting director says, wait, fuck it, here are the sides, come back on Monday. He got cast in that role. The director of that episode, a man named Walter Hill, who would go on to direct a movie named Trespass, and he brought William Sadler to be in that movie because he loved working with him in Tales from the Crypt. While working on that movie, he meets Frank Darabont. And this leads to him being in Shawshank Redemption and The Mist and motherfucking Green Mile. And his relationship to Tales from the Crypt also connected him to producer Joel Silver, who liked him so much that he decided, hey, let's champion this guy as the villain in Die Hard 2. So in addition to being brought back for Demon Knight, his whole film career just was launched by being in the pilot of fucking Tales from the Crypt. And it's just so sweet. It's such a beautiful thing.
And that wasn't the only episode that he was in either.
That's right.
He appeared on the show a couple of times.
That's correct. And he also plays the mummy in the wraparound for Bordello of Blood. And it's so silly and charming to see William Sadler all done up like an old Universal monster mummy and arguing with the Crypt Keeper and doing a rock, paper, scissors tournament where the loser gets their hand chopped off. It's so fucking silly.
Well, also, speaking of Tales from the Crypt alumni, Billy Zane is on that list. He was in an episode titled Well-Cooked Hams, which made me just think of The Simpsons. I can't resist some steamed hams. But yes, also besides William Sadler, Charles Fleischer and Sherry Rose were both on episodes of Tales from the Crypt. So, really awesome to see not just the trajectory for Sadler, but that that like Billy was able to do that as a show, come back, kill it in the movie, have his own career launch from that. But also that other actors that were part of the series were like considered to come back and like be part of the first time that this series was becoming a film. I think that's a really like cool full circle moment for them.
Loyalty to the stable, you might say. And,
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
what's great about this episodic sort of horror television, that you put on a different costume, a wig, a beard, whatever. Hey, different character now. Just go with it. Who cares? It's a whole new story.
Yeah, no one's going to ask questions. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, the Crypt Keeper said it's no big deal. Therefore, it's no big deal.
Exactamundo. So now we go and we're actually going to hear all of the reasons why people thought this was a bad movie. And maybe we will actually get some answers. Maybe I'll get some insight. But we head over to Critics Corner. So we have a 48 Metascore overall. We've got, let's see, the lowest on the board is a 30. And as always, we start at the bottom. And it's the Los Angeles Times. So we're starting with my hometown newspaper. So there's nobody attributed to this either. So again, cowardice. But the pull quote says, based on the quality of the screenplay alone, Demon Knight is strictly a direct-to-video affair with Tales from the Crypt tacked on to the title. The budget expands exponentially to accommodate state-of-the-art special effects, most of them featuring dismemberment naturally. They say that like it's a negative.
Yeah, are you... I mean, I realize I realize how silly it is me saying this, but what, are you high? This is the point. This is why we're here. And to shout out again, the demon design. They didn't do a whole rubber suit. They put prosthetics and like makeup on skinnier stunt people, and then they painted their exposed skin so that they didn't have to enclose everything in a big rubber suit. It allowed them to be more gangly, and they had more movement that they were able to put into their bodies, and they were on foot-tall stilts and wearing hair pieces and nose rings and nipple rings because, the whole 90s grunge thing and metal had fused into this, So
These
like
demons are from Seattle.
Yeah, they are, man, and they want their coffee and their electric guitars. They're going to go fucking postal on you. Watch out. So like these things looked great, and it was kind of unlike anything that had really been done before in this tent.
Yeah, one of the small things, like a very, very tiny detail that I noticed, it's only in one shot that actually matters. It's after Roach wipes up the blood, Billy, expunges the sponge. And he wipes it up, he hands over the key, and then Billy's like dancing up the stairs. But then we get the demons walking up behind him, and you can tell that like their footwear for going upstairs is like super precarious. And it's like they have to measure that step in that like weird stilted heel. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a fall down these stairs at some point during filming, because the demons aren't going to use the handrail, right? They got to creep up. So you had like very carefully, whoever the stunt actors were for that had to walk themselves up the stairs.
Oh, yeah. And, how long were they having to like sit or stand in all that prosthetics and makeup and shit before they were even able to get up and do that? I mean, they must have all gone to bed so sore every night after filming.
I bet, man.
Shout out to the stunt people. You're the best.
Yeah, well, hopefully the Academy finally does give out that stunt award, but I don't know. Who knows? Are the Oscars going to be relevant anymore? People seem to like hate it more and more each year. I'm going to just say this now because I always think it and never say it. But my crazy idea for movie awards is let's give it some room to breathe and treat it like the Hall of Fame in sports, so that there is a window for nomination and induction. So that way, like, it's 2025, we would not even talk about any of these movies for awards consideration until 2030. Give it some room to breathe. Let people see them. Give it some air, and let people actually like make up their mind and not feel forced to have to like shoehorn things into awards consideration or to like sell videos or something like that when you need to attach Oscar nominated something to the project in order to like put eyeballs on it.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid take, to be honest. I've always resented this load of award season stuff that always gets dropped, like some summer reading list for a class you didn't even sign up for. And there's this like social expectation to see all the things on the reading list. It's like, no, dude, I'm over here seeing The Toxic Avenger.
Yeah.
All right. You fucking go watch your Oscar movies.
All right. Well, let's see. We've got 240s on the board. We've got Time Out and Empire. I would suggest Empire because Time Out is just very short. You okay with that?
Let's do it.
All right. Empire, also unattributed cowardice, says despite its aspirations to big screen scares, this delivers more kitsch than a truckload of glow in the dark skeletons. Feels slightly personal. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I like it, because they broke open glow sticks to make the goo from Billy's hand.
That's the thing. Like, what? Is it like it's too campy? It's too kitschy? It's too?
I guess.
Because like that's the thing I think this movie does really well is that it like we were saying before, it slides the tone very appropriately when it needs to, and when it's actually trying to be scary and full of dread, it does that really well. But it's also fun. You know, it's a bit of a ride. The pacing, the suspense, it doesn't let up. It's fantastic in that way.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about the demon design. We talked about sort of like the arm break and like the rip of CCH Pounder's arm. Like, it's so nasty. God. But then also, like, we haven't even mentioned the little boy. With the whole sequence with the comic book is like he's reading it and they're cutting to the comic and then they're cutting back to his transformation in Breaker's face, and they cut to, you see Jada yelling and we cut back, and all of a sudden, like, we don't get the full transformation happening. We just are in like the I don't know, the vivisected face of this boy with his disgusting tongue, cramming it in to Breaker's chest wound. I'm like, all of that is just so gnarly that I'm like, okay, I get that the intent is not necessarily for me to be like, oh my God, I'm so scared. But it is to be like, that's disgusting, and this creature is fucking crazy looking.
This is like a really good drive-in movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That's
it's
a good way to say it.
It's for a group of people to really enjoy and dig into and be excited by. And it's so fun and clever in all the varieties of kills and possessions that we get. Just like with Uncle Willie and getting his head chopped off, but he's still going at it. And he's able to switch into his nice guy face and, kind of scare Geraldine into, submission for a moment there. And then also with this moment with the comic book possession, which is so huge, like it's so historically and thematically relevant, because when comic books were being censored and they were being, gone after, EC comics, horror comics, these were the things that were really demonized. These were the things that were really gone after and fucked with by the comics code. And, big comics people out there listening are going to shake their head and go, well, the comics code wasn't censorship. That was a self-regulatory group. Yeah, when you have to self-regulate yourself because you are obviously being threatened by the power structure that they're going to really bring the hammer down unless you do it yourself. Yeah, you're still being coerced into censoring. It's like the panopticon effect, where you're so convinced you're being watched that you just behave and follow the rules, even though you've got no proof anybody's actually watching or anybody's going to come and get you. The fact is, they could at any time. And so, fuck out of my face with that comics code was self-regulatory. That was censorship. They just took the least shit deal they could think of to take in an artistically oppressive state. And EC Comics, that was the one that got hit the worst. The horror comics. Tales from the Crypt, what is it? Tales from the Vault, or no, Vault of Horror, excuse me. And so it's so fun and subversive and historically relevant to actually have the demons possess a little boy, put evil in his heart, make him an evil demonic killer through the comics. Like, that's just, love it. Yes.
Yeah, it was when comics were like the violent video games of their day.
Exactly.
They're polluting the minds of the youth.
Play the comic backwards and you hear or you can read the demonic messages.
Yeah, if you read the book backwards, then you open a portal to hell. Well, we're climbing the 9 levels of hell right now with Critics Corner. So we go up to the 50 range. And we've got 2 on the board. We've got the Chicago Reader and the San Francisco Chronicle. So I'll let you choose.
I'll go ahead and I'll divert. Not divert. What's the word I want to use here?
Defer?
Defer. Thank you, my good sir. I'll defer to the locale, my home city, Chicago. What do we have to say?
This is Jonathan Rosenbaum. Gave it a 50 out of 100. Says the silly story is basically just an excuse for some thrills and goofy one-liners. But even if the more likable characters tended to get killed off too early for my taste, I wasn't bored. So you liked it. And yeah. So you liked it and just gave it a 5 out of 10.
It doesn't sound like this kind of movie is this guy's kind of thing. And so part of me feels like 5 out of 10 from this guy is a victory.
Yeah, the characters that I like died too early, and it's an excuse for thrills and goofy one-liners. Like, yes, and yes. And you weren't bored. So also, yes, that's 3 yeses in my book. So, yeah, I think you liked it, Johnny. All right, let's go to the next rung on the ladder. We've got 2 60s on the board. We've got Variety and the New York Times. You get to pick, sir.
Variety. What do they say?
Joe Layden says, mix Night of the Living Dead with Sam Raimi's Evil Dead movies, then add a hefty dose of Beavis and Butthead style silliness, and you have Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight, a fang-in-cheek horror thriller that likely will please fans and turn off non-devotees. Nailed it.
I think that hits it right on the mark.
Nailed it. Way to go. Nice pick with Variety. Still only gave it a 6 out of 10, though. It's like, you know exactly what this movie is and who it's for, and you're like, yeah, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah, but you don't have to be that guy to acknowledge that they had a goal and they hit the fucking bullseye. And honestly, even though I had talked about my love of Tales from the Crypt being intertwined with my love of Beavis and Butthead, I don't know if I would really agree with that correlation that he makes there as far as Demon Knight is concerned. These characters are so archetypical that I really do think it lends itself more to a Night of the Living Dead, yes, where you have these clear representations. And I really want to praise the wardrobe in this movie because they make very loud, very effective choices with these costumes, and they really do say quite a bit about who these characters are and what their history is, what their place is in this shitty little community.
Yeah, and Vanya and I end up talking about wardrobe choices like this a lot when we get together and record, because I think it is more difficult sometimes to get recognition for costuming like contemporary everyday kind of people versus like the big Victorian epic or the big Roman gladiator movie, right? Because those require a lot of work to create costumes that don't exist versus like knowing the character and picking clothes that fit them and fit the character. It's like a different skill set than being a seamstress that is tasked with like designing these types of things that are going to be period accurate or close to it. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm going to actually not go to the highest score on the board, which is a 75 from TV Guide magazine, because the review itself is just kind of like bad. Like it's not written well, so it has nothing to say. So we're going to go with IGN, which gave it a 70. Says Zane is an absolute blast. Whether doing a little dance or trying to steal his way into each character's soul, he's having too much fun. And I think that's the best one to end on for a Billy Zane month movie.
Yeah, he's having fun. You will have fun watching this film.
Absolutely. I think most people would probably enjoy this. I was tempted to try to get my wife to watch it, but she was watching TV and horror is not really her thing. So it would have been a hard sell. But I think that even like if I took her to the theaters to watch this, I think she'd probably be like, I don't have an escape. I probably had a good time with it. But given the option to like be on her phone or something with a movie that is not her genre preference, she would probably sort of be distracted. But yeah, I think, if you like horror movies, like this is a good one.
It's one of the absolute best of the 90s. I mean, and the 90s takes way too much hate. It takes way too much shit from people.
We're here to give it back.
In terms of its horror. Yeah, we're giving it back. And Zane is the man to take us there.
That's right. And so now we head over to the Gateway, because it's Gateway drug movie time. So for people who maybe have never seen Demon Knight, which I feel like is probably a small number, but what's a movie that is in the ballpark with Demon Knight that would be a good jumping off point?
When I was thinking about this earlier, the one that I kept coming to is one you actually referenced at the beginning of our discussion, Monster Squad.
Ooh.
Because, we have a familiar but different threat that transcends the normal rules of human reality. We single out a small band of people who, like it or lump it, are the ones who can face down this big evil threat. But it's a lot more entry level. It's a lot more safe, It's a lot more similar to the Goonies. So yeah, that was one that came to mind. But I feel like two other big, heavy hitters in my brain are the original Night of the Living Dead and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, like as much as I honed in specifically on all of the things that I liked from the first Terminator film that were brought over here, I feel like Dusk Till Dawn is the right choice because it has, maybe the reputation that Tales from the Crypt maybe could have gotten, but also is very functionally similar in so many ways that, yeah, if you like Dusk Till Dawn, Tales from the Crypt is like that'd be a great 1-2 punch if you were programming something. So yeah, that's an awesome choice. Well, we've come to the end of our road, sir. We have been past the key of destiny. We got the stars aligned on our hands. And now all that's left to do is tell people where they can find you doing your Demon Knight stuff.
Well, now that I've got this hand tattoo, my employment possibilities have really gone down. So I'm going to be podcasting like crazy over at Movies for Dayz, your non-pretentious, easy access movie chat podcast, where every Friday I take a deep dive into any movie from any decade with anybody's guess as to how we chose that movie that week. I'm a proud member of the You Run Podcast Network and yourunpodcast.com. You can find me on Twitter at MoviesDayz. Dayz is spelled with a Z because I grew up in the 90s when everything was extreme. And I'm also over on Instagram at Movies4Days. Same thing, but there's a number 4 in the middle. And there's underscores in there where you would put underscores. One day I'll find a better way of saying it. But we do, it's all about celebration and exploration on my show. We just do pretty much any movie that the guest is passionate about. Because in my book, everybody turns into a movie freak when you present them with the right movie that they have that relationship with. And that's what I'm always excited to do on Movies for Days, is find the movie that brings the movie freak out of your mild-mannered film fan.
That's a good way to put it. I think there is sort of like, there's always a tipping point. You just got to find what it is. And in a weird sort of like coincidental way, the episode that you just released on Friday was the one that we recorded prior, right? On Knox Goes Away.
That's right. That's the most recent episode out right now, is Knox Goes Away. We've also got an episode coming soon on a British film I'd never seen before called 24-Hour Party People. That was fantastic. And we will have the second episode of my Star Trek subseries, Boldly Going Somewhere, covering Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So, yeah, come check me out. There really is something for everybody. I've been going every Friday nonstop for 5 years plus. It is positively fucking Movies for Days at my network.
Literally Movies for Days. And I'm sure we will find another Michael Keaton project to jump in on at some point. If I have to suggest one, which I don't have to, but I want to,
Please
one
do.
that I would suggest is, well, it's always a fun one in Pacific Heights, but the one that I'm thinking of is actually called Gung Ho. And it is, it's about Michael Keaton is the foreman at like a Detroit auto plant, and a Japanese, like basically like Toyota buys the Ford factory and is going to start making Toyotas, and they're trying to keep the workforce on while also teaching them the Japanese way to do it. And so Michael Keaton is like caught between the workers and also the corporate side wanting to do this. And I just feel like he's very good in it. And it is like a satirical comedy. So it's like right in the wheelhouse for things that I love, and directed by Ron Howard. So
yeah, I'm in. We gotta check it out.
We're going to, sooner or later, we're just going to scratch them all off the list one by one. Be like, all right, we've already gotten like 4 or 5 down, and you've done Batman stuff, so that takes care of another couple too right there. So, we'll get there. We got like 100 to go, but Movies for Days.
I was going to say, we don't try to take the whole mountain all in one bite, one step at a time. We know we'll get there.
Cool. Well, it's been a pleasure, man. I'm so glad that we got to do this and that we got to go to bat for Demon Knight, because it's an awesome movie. I love it. I still love it. I never stopped, but I just appreciated more this time that it wasn't simply, I saw one of the reviews that I didn't read said, was like, I probably would have liked this if I was 12. I was like, fuck you, man. I saw this when I was 12 and I still like it now. So
dude, I'm right there with you.
yeah, like it wasn't something where I looked back with these sort of rose-colored glasses, only wanting to see the good things. I was really like expecting to see the cracks in the facade, but I didn't. So I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it took my most aggressive nitpicking to find negatives in this thing. And that includes stuff that we didn't even have time to highlight, like Thomas Hayden Church, who's just perfect in this movie. Like, he's perfectly cast like everyone, but my God, does he shine as the asshole roach.
So good.
And also the, may as well skip past it because it's escaped me now. There was one other thing that's like, we didn't even talk about this, but of course now I can't remember it.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sure we'll get together again soon. I'll have to coordinate with you for Ghost Rider, so that's going to be coming down the pipe at some point. But yeah, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man.
Back at you, man. It's always an absolute blast, and I can't wait for our next collaboration because it's always a good time, so I know that's going to be a good time.
Absolutely, man. Well, you have yourself a great night, all right?
You do as well. Take care. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thanks again to Newman for coming on the show and surviving the siege with me as we took on Demon Knight. It's always a pleasure to talk to him, whether it's over at his show, Movies for Days, or whether he comes over here and hangs out at Bad Movies We Love. As I mentioned during the episode, I just did an episode of his podcast on the film Knox Goes Away. So if you had fun hanging out with us here, I would encourage you to check out Movies for Days and Don't be bashful. I will put the link in the show notes, so it's just one click away for your convenience. And make sure you tune in next week and the rest of August, because we've still got a few Zanes up our sleeve. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to the episode. I know there's a seemingly infinite number of options when it comes to podcasts, and I appreciate you letting me into your ear holes and hopefully into your hearts. In all seriousness, though, time is valuable, and I am very grateful that you've entrusted me with yours. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review or at least a rating and telling a friend about it. If you don't enjoy it, then maybe let's keep that between us. As I mentioned in the open, the new members-only section is in fact live at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support, where you're going to get access to a bunch of goodies for only $5 a month. And I would absolutely love to hear from you, so if you have a bad movie you love and would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact me at badmovieswelove@theshice.com or badmovieswelove spelled LUV on Twitter and Instagram. And until next time, take care, be well, stay safe, and have fun however you get your movies. I know you're out there somewhere, Rids. I love you.